Good morning. Thank you for coming and sitting with me this morning. There was a time back in China, back in the day, when monks and lay persons would travel around from different temples and do what's sometimes called Dharma combat. But that's not really a good term because it's not really about winning and losing, because in Zen, there's no winning and losing, you see. So it's about testing your own understanding by asking a question of some other teacher to see what the interaction is and how you respond. So this monk came to this master in this monastery, and the master said to him, because he knew he was traveling around to, test his understanding. And he said, "So what do you hope to gain by doing this?" And this person's name was Hogan. And Hogan said, "I don't know." The master said, "Not knowing is the closest fit." So then the next morning, the master saw him off at the gate. And he asked Hogan, "You monks usually say the whole universe is just one mind. Just tell me, is this stone," pointing to a stone here on the path, "is this stone within the mind or outside of the mind?" "Within the mind," Hogan said. "It will be awfully difficult for you to travel around with such a big stone inside of you." Hogan was shocked by this remark and decided to stay at the monastery to study. Another one of my favorite stories is the one where these two monks are traveling and they have to cross a river, or they're traveling alongside a river. I don't remember whether they had to cross it or not, but there was a woman there and she looked really stressed out about having to get to the other side of the river. So the one monk picked her up and put her on his shoulders, and they went across the river together. The other monk was really perturbed by this. So the monk puts the woman down and they continue on their journey. Well, as they're traveling, this other monk is kind of fuming, It's like, God, he broke his vows. He's not supposed to touch women. Look at this. Now what? How am I going to approach this with him? So finally, he can't hold it back any longer. And he says, "You broke your vows. You picked up a woman." He said, "I put that woman back down way back there. You're still carrying her around." So I think both of those stories say something about how we get caught up in the projections of our own mind. And the whole thing about, living in a dualistic sort of environment, that's the delusion. That's what we keep fooling ourselves with. Us and them, that over there, I'm over here. This is separate from this. When in actuality, nothing is separate. And our original nature is always pure and perfect just the way it is. It's just like this. So there's no place to go, nothing to gain. Cars are driving by, the sky is blue. We're sitting on a gray rug. This is this moment right here, right now. Where are you going to go? So our mind is always traveling, right? So when we're sitting, one of the things we do is we keep coming back and we recognize that we're not our thinking. Yet, when our thinking has an emotion attached to it, some projection idea of what reality is, we follow down that road and we cause suffering for ourselves and others. So if you're really asking, how can I help? There's nothing there, you see. A bodhisattva doesn't abide in the idea of a being, a soul, form, not form, this or that. So testing where you're at in your practice is best done by asking a question. So how many questions do we have here today?
Morning, my girlfriend and I went for sunrise in Mayaka. We traveled out there, a 2-mile hike into a lake, and we sat for a couple of hours there. It was really good. And, it went on, and it's lunchtime, and we're sitting by kind of a stream and a sandy bank. And blanket having lunch and looking down, and there's minnows in the water, and they probably lived there their entire lives. That one little patch of water, this stream, and I just kind of staring at them, and I asked her, "Do you think that fish thinks it's a fish in the water, or does it not know that it's not the water itself, and that it's a fish, or you know?" And it tripped me up a lot, and I like getting tripped up like that. But yeah, things as the way they are, but not the way I think them to be, is a contemplation I often find myself in.
Yeah, so there's a kind of another student asks is the teacher about inner and outer. Are the inner and outer separate or not? And what's inner and what's outer? And his reply was something like, I really enjoy the Yangtze River and going down and vacationing alongside the river and enjoying the beautiful spring blossoms. So this teacher's mind was clear. It wasn't about inner, outer. Didn't have inner, outer. It's just present. This is it. One time up in Germantown at the Zendo that I used to live at, monks would travel and come there from Korea once in a while. And there was this very so-called famous Zen master guy. I lived in the old farmhouse on the property with my family, and there was a lake, there was a pond down on the end, and it was beautiful, surrounded by woods. It was an old farm. It's a very nice location and beautiful summertime. In fact, my Zen stick here, which is carved by beavers, came from there. So I walked down just like I do every morning and for my walk, and he was sitting there, and he had his robe open. So he was sunning his body, facing the other way. The sun was, coming at him, and he was sitting right on the edge of the pond, looking at the little fish swimming around. And he heard me coming, and he stopped, and he closed his robe like this, and he said, "The fish are very happy today." Thinking, thinking, thinking. Don't think too much. Is that okay? Any other questions or ideas or thoughts today?
I would like to share something.
Yeah.
I'm from Michigan, and I was affected by the shooting at Michigan State University. I know people that work at the university and hospitals there. I know people that have kids there that are going to school. I know things. I have a connection with that.
Yeah.
And so I heard about this woman who had no students at MSU, but she was a mother. And she wondered what she could do. And so she went to campus and she offered free mom hugs to anybody who wanted a hug. And she had hundreds of students come and she gave them hugs. She didn't know who they were and they didn't talk, but just she gave them a hug and everything. And I thought, we always wonder what we can do. We can do what we can do. And she was a mom and she could offer hugs, so that's what she did. And that added a different layer to everything, the whole conversation. And so I just wanted to share.
Thank you. Yes. Excellent.
You always have something to offer. Let's say we're in.
And I don't think it made a lot of the, ABC national news. I don't think there was mom giving free hugs. It was just something I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I hope it's true.
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be sensationalized to have great effect. I think it confounds me sometimes when I look at the history of Zen and how from these small little gatherings, these stories would expand to the point where now they're all over the world. I don't even understand how that could happen. Some writing, some poem, some, a couple of interactions, and people just keep telling that story and over again. So that's like one of those stories, that giving a hug, when you look back at how can I help and how people have helped in the past in really tragic, difficult times, it's usually like that, right? It's something where the heart to heart, mind to mind experience has very little to do with, your judgment. It comes from a much different place. Yeah. If you get caught up in an ideology, you're stuck. If ideology is your thing, you're stuck. That's as far as you go. So you need to drop it, because all that thinking about things being a certain way, whether it's a Buddhist ideology, a Christian ideology, doesn't matter, a Republican, Democrat, whatever your sort of view, saying, well, if the world was just like this, it would be perfect. This morning, I ran a stop sign in my neighborhood. And someone who was walking their dog was someone who I know. And they were studying me as I was coming up to the stop sign. I could see them studying me like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? I just cruised right through it, rolled down my window and waved. And he said, Will, stop sign. Was he wrong? Was he right? Was I wrong? Was I right? See, this is where this duality thing starts happening. And then do you question yourself or you question him? Who's right? Who's wrong? Now, my wife would say, you should have stopped at the stop sign. And she would be right. And I would say, it was perfectly safe. There was nothing happening and I didn't need to stop. Rules are there for us to obey because they help us. I don't know, but I will never take a risk where I could hurt someone. I don't do it mindlessly. I'm totally aware of my surroundings. I know exactly what's going on around me all the time. I just did what I needed to do in the moment. Being present in the moment, all of that. And I was a driving instructor at one point in my life. So I taught people how to stop at stop signs.
That's good.
So it's not that I don't know about it, right? I know about all the rules. I had to pass a test, But, when I thought about him afterwards, I thought, wow, it reminded me of the story of crossing the river in some respects, Fortunately, I found this path like you all have. And every day it gets a little bit better. It's a little bit smoother. It's not perfect. Shit, it's life. You know, there's a lot to do, lots of hugs to give, lots to do. You know, the Zen master Go-Sanshin that I studied with up there, he drove people crazy sometimes. He really pissed them off, did things that they just didn't understand, couldn't appreciate. I got along with him pretty well, but some of his students, he would kick them out, make them go away. Get out of here. You're no good. You know, stuff like that. It's like, what is going on? I just never, got it. I was fortunate, and what I needed from him wasn't that. One of the most important things I learned from him was sitting in silence, just sitting, not a word between us, but there was mind to mind. I got that, this began to really understand all that by just sitting in silence with him, because there was nothing there with him. There was no projecting, see? His mind was clear like space. And the truth is, all our minds are like that originally, because our original nature is pure and perfect. It's not defiled. We just add all these layers on in our lives by our systems that we create. So I'm an old man, but I'm a happy old man. I remember being a young man and thinking, I don't want to be a grumpy old man. I'd see these grumpy old men. Life sucks. So don't be grumpy old men or grumpy old women as you age. Appreciate what you got. Well, it was a beautiful sit this morning. Really enjoyed sitting with you all. Please come back. Nice to see you and meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank
you. Yeah, you too. Come back.